And here we are, he's gone himself. This could win him the Tour of Britain. Oh my goodness me, look at that ball. He's left the rest for dead. Here they come into the closing stages. Those weary legs, he asks for a little more power. Oh, it was so close.
From Beijing to Big Ben, Britain is officially obsessed with cycling. The Tour of Britain, flushed with Olympic success, boasts a brace of gold medalists and welcomes to these shores a field peppered with genuine world-class riders. Today, it all gets underway on the streets of London. The capital city hosting a capital event. Today, Westminster turns its back on four wheels and crackles instead with all the energy of a big bike race. The banks of the Thames have become a giant velodrome as the sport of the moment takes centre stage. Year on year this event grows in stature. This fifth edition promises to be the best yet. The stars have arrived, the teams are at the start line, the race can begin. What lies ahead of them is a week of racing through pain, pleasure and some of the most stunning backdrops this country has to offer. Last year there were celebrations and consolations, but in the end Frenchman Romain Fayou snatched victory by the slimmest possible margin on the final stage. And this is the nationwide squiggly line he's going to have to ride faster than anyone else if he's going to defend his title. The 2008 route starts with today's circuit in central London before exiting the congestion charge zone and heading for Newbury. Then it's off to Somerset and Devon before charging headlong into the Midlands. After that it's Yorkshire for stage 5 and a spectacular finish in Gateshead the next day. Then from Glasgow, the tour turns south again before finishing in another city centre parade in Liverpool. 96 riders, 16 teams, and at this point you'd normally want to say just one aim, but this is cycling and it's much more sophisticated than that. So, to help us tell the story of this year's race and to second guess the thoughts of the riders in the peloton is the last man to win a stage on the Tour of Britain, Paul Manning, still, and quite rightly so, wearing his gold medal from the team pursuit in Beijing. Paul, tell us, how many hours have you actually spent not wearing that since you've been back?
Oh, not many, Ned. Maybe just the hours I've been asleep, and it's never been far out of reach at those times. So, you know, I've really been enjoying the success we had out there in Beijing.
Has it sunk in yet?
Only just starting to. You know, you see today the power of a gold medal. People love seeing the gold medal, and it's a great thing to share with the public and your friends and family, obviously. So, you know, that's the real special thing about winning that medal.
Well, you come and enjoy the high life with us, and as you know, it's extremely glamorous. Your teammates from Beijing, Geraint Thomas and Bradley Wiggins, are both in this race, of course. Hoping for big things from them. But what else are we hoping to see from this week as it unfolds?
As you've mentioned, it's a really high quality field this year. Year on year, it's getting better and better stature in the pro peloton. So I want to see the British riders really step up and follow our success, really. You know, we're showing that British riders can do it out there. Recent success in Tour of Ireland for a British rider, Russell Downing. So I think, you know, he'll be up for it, and hopefully a lot of the other British contingent in the peloton will really be up for it. And good solid week of racing, I think, and showcase what British riding in Great Britain has to offer.
Thanks very much. Well, all week Paul and I will be trying to crack the code behind the story of each race, and meanwhile reporter Rachel Phillips will be telling tales from within the peloton and beyond. Rachel.
Yes, well, as we've seen, it'll start by the Thames and finish at the Mersey. Over the next 8 days, this race will sweep past some of Britain's most iconic landmarks. I'll be out and about chatting to some of the crowds who've gathered along the route. And as for the race itself, well, we've talked about last year's riders. So let's take a look at the ones to watch this year. There's no doubting that Bradley Wiggins is the headline act. The multiple gold medalist on the track, flushed with double Olympic success, is now making his Tour of Britain debut. 6 years his junior is Geraint Thomas. He collected gold in Beijing alongside Wiggins in the team pursuit. Now he's back in the red of Barlow World. Luxembourger Kim Kirchen is the real deal, a powerhouse at the heart of Team Columbia. He wore yellow for 3 days on this year's Tour de France. And of course, Romain Fayou knows what it feels like to wear the maillot jaune. Already a French hero, he proved last summer that a sprinter can win this race outright. For many, Fayou is this year's favourite. And it doesn't stop there. Other names include Stuart O'Grady, Alessandro Petacchi and David Miller, making it the strongest field the Tour of Britain has ever assembled.
See you later.
Well, a third of the peloton on this year's race is British, and 3 of the teams feature all British lineups, and not unsurprisingly, one of those is Team Great Britain. Paul, that's your old outfit, of course. You were riding for them last year. Tell us about what we can expect from them this year.
Yeah, well, riding for Great Britain, it's always a great pleasure to be in that GB jersey, and it's a really good spread of riders in this year's team, managed by Max Gandry, massively experienced director and rider in his own right. And they'll be looking to place people in moves every day, looking for overall, led by, I guess, unofficial team captain will be Rob Hales, the national road race champion this year. And those young riders such as Ben Swift, who was King of Mountains last year, they could well challenge for the overall race victory as well as stages.
And of course, wearing that jersey on your home tour is going to mean an awful lot, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Rob would be super proud to impress with the national champion's jersey on his back, and then the rest of the guys, the GB jersey, they'll be looking to get up on the road in their home stages. Something I've always looked to do in the last few years in the Midlands, and a lot of support from the roadside for them. So it'll be an enjoyable week.
Excellent. Well, for now, the talking is over. When you come back from the break, the 2008 Tour of Britain is off. Don't go away. It's just seconds to go now before the Tour starts with a big bang, and when it does get going, this is what awaits them in London. Today's showpiece opener starts and finishes under the watchful gaze of Big Ben before touring the government departments, shooting past Downing Street and heading for the Thames once more. From there, it's all the way along the embankment before the Tower of London looms large, and it's time to turn back again. There are 10 circuits in all, making up 53 miles, including 3 intermediate sprints and 3 King of the Mountains lines at Tower Hill, which unusually for this time of year is free of snow. Well, no snow, but it is wet, and it has been raining, and it looks like it's going to rain again. This course could be dangerous, couldn't it, Paul?
It could be. You see, I've put my rain jacket on, and that's what some of the riders will be doing. It's wet underfoot. Under the tyres, they'll be thinking about there's some leaves on the course, some slippy white lines, some of the manhole covers that are going to be wet again, so they'll be cautious, but I guess they've got lead motorbikes that they can follow, and that'll give them an idea of speed around the corners, and it's quite a long straight course for the majority.
Take one look. Are you glad you're not amongst them? It's savage, isn't it?
I am really. It's going to be a hard race, hard week ahead for the guys, but it's plenty of enjoyment and some good success for some of the guys.
OK, let's join our commentators, Hugh Porter and Anthony McCrossan.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, away we go. And Peter Hendy, Transport Commissioner for London, drops the Union flag to start the 5th Tour of Britain bike race. Over the next 8 days, the international field of competitors are going to face 720 miles of varying terrain. And amongst the very strong entry are Geraint Thomas and Bradley Wiggins, who covered themselves in glory in Beijing, winning gold medals. Throw into the mix Alessandro Petacchi with over 150 professional wins to his credit, Danilo De Luca, who won last year's Tour of Italy, and mixed with those Steve Cummings and Dave Miller, and you can see that we have got a very tremendous contest to look forward to. Let's not forget, of course, the defending champion Romain Fayou, who brings with him to this race a very strong Agritabile team.
Well, the riders now rolling out. Of course, the weather conditions, as you mentioned, have improved vastly. 10 laps of this course. It should prove some thrilling racing as this race progresses.
Just over 5 miles a lap right here then in the heart of London. And I'm glad to say that those greasy conditions are beginning to dry out, which means the riders can race around in complete safety. There are 3 sprints on the stage today. They contain valuable time bonuses, 3 to the first, 2 to second and 1 for third. And we also have 3 mountain climbs today. It's a 3rd category climb in the Eon King of the Mountains, and that means that we will present the spotted jersey at the end of the stage. So 96 riders here from 16 teams finding their way around the course, and at the early stages being tapped out at quite a light pace. They are just finding the best line, and of course the confidence will grow as the speed will increase.
Well, right in the centre of the picture there is Russell Downing. What a spectacular week he had in Ireland last week. Russell Downing wearing the yellow jersey of the Tour of Ireland. Just on his right hand side, riding for the Team Columbia, a rider who wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France this year. Just caught a glimpse of him, Kim Kirchen of the Team Columbia. Now they are here with a very strong squad, and they're sure to challenge Romain Fayou of his Agritubal team as he tries to defend his title.
Fantastic course this. It began on Victoria Embankment, and the riders head on towards Houses of Parliament, and they then got past Big Ben, Bridge Street, and of course Parliament Street, Whitehall, where all the government offices are, and then eventually comes back right at the side of the Thames. It's going to be a superb race, a fantastic pipe opener for this, the 5th edition of the Tour of Britain. And believe me, once the blue touch paper gets lit and the hammer goes down, there'll be no quarter given here, because everybody wants to chalk themselves up at the top of the board as the winner in front of this massive crowd in London in stage 1 of this tour.
Well, the 96 riders certainly inspired as they signed on earlier today. A huge crowd waiting for the riders. Such is the popularity of cycling on the back of those fantastic medal performances in Beijing.
Let's label one or two of the big stars to look out for, Anthony. Let's of course refer to last year's winner, Romain Fayou. He's a fantastic sprinter, the 24-year-old. He won by the scantest of margins at the end of the race last year. It went to count back. The difference between him and the man that finished second was the difference on the prologue. Leading the Team Columbia squad is Kim Kirchen. Kirchen, of course, winner of the Flèche Wallonne and 8th in the Tour de France this year. Great Britain, they're led by Rob Hales, the current national champion. He's got a young squad with him, and he will be passing on his experience. But in that team is the great Ben Swift, who of course will be out to try and defend his King of the Mountains title he won 12 months ago. And the Palmeiras Resort Tavira team, strong team there. Rodrigues Blanco has just won the Tour of Portugal, and let's not forget Pinarello Racing Team, Russell Downing, the man of the moment, who of course has won the Premier Calendar, and he just finished second in the Tour of Ireland. And there we've got one of the talents in the squad, 47 years of age, Malcolm Elliott.
Well, Malcolm Elliott, what a story that would be if he could bring home even a stage victory or a top performance in this Tour of Britain, and a great reception for him here in London. Of course, we shouldn't forget a rider who's won the Paris-Roubaix, Stuart O'Grady, leading his team CSC Saxo Bank, and O'Grady looking extremely fit. A great performance in the Tour de France, supporting Carlos Sastre to that win in Paris.
And of course in the team for O'Grady he's got Bradley McGee, one of the most experienced riders in the field, and also a gold medal winner for the Team Pursuit. And he is one of the talents to look out for. They've got Anders Lund as well of Denmark, who's very, very powerful. And young Jonathan Bellis from the Isle of Man, he has got a chance here to excel, because he's been given a chance to ride on the CSC Saxo Bank team, third in the world under 23 competition last year in Stuttgart. Now then, on to Rafa Conda Recycling.co, and here their squad is led by Chris Newton, who's just won a bronze medal in the Olympic Games.
Well, the Rafa Condor Recycling team, in the press conference yesterday in the build-up, they said of course their two sponsors, Rafa and Condor, based in London, and Recycling based up in the north near the finish of this race, so they're riding to the homes of their two sponsors.
Barlow World, another strong team. We've already mentioned Geraint Thomas and Steve Cummings. They've got Robbie Hunter, the only South African ever to win a stage in the Tour de France. Watch out for him. And they've got another good sprinter as well in Daryl Impey. Now then, let's move on to Garmin Chipotle team, and in that squad there it's led by David Miller, very experienced, with a big fella Magnus Backstead and Julian Dean, who just finished very prominently in the Tour of Ireland, and he finished second in the Tour of Britain way back in 2004. So there's another big star.
Certainly. Well, let's not forget, and talking about Ireland, the Anpos team, they are the Sean Kelly Academy, Hugh. Of course, Sean Kelly guiding that young squad, and they've got two British riders in particular we should mention. Dan Lloyd, a former silver medalist in the National Road Race Championships, and Dan Fleeman, who won the Tour of the Pyrenees recently.
Such a rich mix of talent in this race. The South Australian team, AIS, they're wearing numbers 151 through to 156. They've got a very talented outfit as well. And the oldest member of that team is 22 years of age, Simon Clark, and he's in very good form indeed. Well, everything to race for. This is the early stages. We'll take a break. Well, welcome back, and the field are starting to get a little bit frisky now. They've found their way around this course and they're growing in confidence, and one or two little attacks beginning to form.
Well, the big teams in this race want to try and get at least some riders up the road and just test out the other squads. Of course, you've got the balance here between the big professional teams of Team Columbia, Agra 2 Bell, and the Garmin Chipotle team who have ridden the Tour de France, mixed with some of the smaller squads. So there is a real mix and ability of riders here. Lots of probing attacks early on in the race, and the speed is increasing all the time. About 13 minutes for the first lap of the race, but now the pace is starting to increase quite considerably.
Looks a little bit like Ben Swift near to the front there, and riders gathering themselves. Great Britain on the right hand side here of the peloton. Ben Swift, of course, winner of the King of the Mountains in this contest last year. He'll be out to try and get some early points under his belt. He would dearly love to successfully defend that crown.
Tom Southam sitting in second place in the string of riders as we go through one of the tunnels up towards the top of the course, and Southam is looking pretty focused today as they look across the MTN Renegade team from South Africa. That's an interesting squad. They're building their confidence all the time. They're led by David George, and now we're starting to see some attacks on the right hand side of the road, but maybe just testing a few of the riders out. This Top Sport Vlaanderen team keen to be seen at the front of the peloton.
Well, Great Britain right near the front there. They've got a young team skippered by Rob Hales. They've got Jonathan McAvoy, Ian Stannard, Tom Southam, Ben Swift, and of course young Andy Tennant, who was a junior World Pursuit champion.
Chris Newton gritting his teeth at the front of the string, and look at this, the arrowhead formation at the front of the peloton signifying that the pace has significantly increased, and it's Rafa Condor Recycling who are starting to mix it up with the other teams. Here goes an attack on the left hand side of the screen from the Top Sport Vlaanderen squad.
Young Belgian squad trying to get clear at this stage. Looks a little bit like Van der Waal, or it may well be Van Speybroek.
Here we go through to the Eon King of the Mountains point, where the King of the Mountains jersey will be contested, and we are starting to see more attacks at the front of this race.
4 points, 3, 2 and 1 are the available points here in this King of the Mountains contest. It is a third category affair, and of course the major climbs in the Eon King of the Mountains are the first category. First, second and third are the ascents where the riders amass their points.
Well, this is an interesting part of the circuit where we loop round and we head back down to Victoria Embankment, and of course if there is a breakaway, this is the point at which the peloton can glance across and see what the time gap is.
Well, they're pausing at the front here now, aren't they? And it looked to me as though a few riders were trying to go away. Daniel De Luca has been prominent at the head of this main field, so he's here to try and hone his form, ready for the forthcoming World Championships that will take place in Varese in just over a couple of weeks' time. Another little break developing.
Looks to me like the An Post team are just trying to nip away yet again, but it's the Pinarello Racing team who immediately jump onto the wheel. Garmin Chipotle are also represented towards the front of the group. Looks to me like Malcolm Elliott is in the mix.
Well, Malcolm Elliott, 47 years of age, a man that won the Sprinters jersey in the Tour of Spain many, many years ago. And of course he's won many major tours as well, including the Milk Race. So he's still quick, he's got the firepower in the legs, and he's still keen to get victories. He's had one or two this year, and it would be a fairy tale end to this stage if Elliott was to snap the top spot up.
Another testing move starting to form at the front, and this looks like it is another one of the South Australia AIS team riders. Could well be Simon Clark. Immediately Evan Oliphant of the Ploughman Craven Racing team. Easy to spot that squad in the pink, nullifying the move.
Colombia are also present, and I can just see Danilo De Luca. He's watching all the moves, and it seems to me that the LPR Brakes Balance squad are here to try and impress.
Well, you'll notice that the roads are certainly drying out quite considerably now, which means that the riders will be a lot more confident going through these corners, and the pace is starting to increase. Remember, almost 14 minutes for the first lap of just over 5 miles, but the pace this time looking significantly higher, which means that we will be starting to see times around this course of round about the 11-minute mark. But Oliphant again on the front, slowing the pace down.
So Ploughman Craven quite happy at the moment to lead the field round this course, and as Anthony said, we've had a lot of attacks, but now once again the pace has eased back as riders prepare to launch themselves. Downing, you can see just on the left of our screen, a race face on there full of concentration, and Great Britain near to the head of the big peloton as well.
Just in front of Russell Downing, it's baby face from the Rock Racing team, Oscar Sevilla, just tapping out a nice steady rhythm there. But Russell Downing looking vigilant already, and many of the team directors saying that in the Tour of Britain, because you've got small squads of 6 riders, you have to be vigilant from kilometre 0. You can't let anything go or the race can be lost.
Barlow World also coming through there in the red with that yellow band across. Good team, Barlow World, led by Steve Cummings, Geraint Thomas, Diego Cachia, Robbie Hunter, Daryl Impey and Hugo Sabido. One of the squads that could be very prominent in this race.
Well, Ploughman Craven have had a problem earlier on. One of their riders has punctured on the first lap, and that's maybe why they are slowing the race down just a little bit now to let the rest of the squad come together. A little attack starting to happen, Hugh.
Attack on the left of our screen. That looks like one of the riders from the LPR Brakes team. No, in fact, it's Agritabel. So the team of Agritabel, who've got the man that won the race last year, Romain Fayou, in the team, looked very, very keen at the early stages of the race. So they've come here then out to try and successfully defend the title that they won 12 months ago.
And the pace is decreased at the front as the attack is nullified, and MTN Enegade looking keen along the banks of the River Thames again.
Long way to go, but we can join Rachel Phillips, who's up at Tower Hill amongst some of the spectators.
Yeah, well, the bikes are passing us as we speak here at Tower Hill, and there's a real buzz around cycling at the moment in London. The success of our athletes in Beijing brought a whole new fan base to the sport, and as you can see, people are lining the streets here. We'll just have a word with you, sir. What brings you to the race today?
Just to watch you racing.
How far have you come?
From Dundee, Scotland.
So a fair trek. You won't get to watch the Glasgow leg.
Hopefully next weekend, yeah.
Have you been impressed by what you've seen so far?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, the guys out in the Olympics were fantastic, and it's really good to see so many of them here. Geraint Thomas and Bradley, excellent, really good.
You mentioned Bradley then. A lot of people will be desperate to get a glimpse of Olympic hero Bradley Wiggins, and he'll be keen to raise the memory of his performance in London last year when the Tour de France came to the capital.
The prologue of last year's Tour de France drew hundreds of thousands of people to London. The sport is growing faster here than in any other European city. One man instrumental in its growth is the starter of today's race, Peter Hendy.
This is a tremendous day. It's got real competitive sport by Olympic gold medal winners. You know, on the streets of London, what could be better?
Hendy wants to keep the sport in the spotlight. To celebrate its renaissance, Bike Jam arrived in town today, a festival of everything bikes.
It is, and cyclists are also full of fun. They enjoy any event that celebrates what they do. We've got all sorts of things happening at Bike Jam today, from bike art to bike fitness to bike races. I mean, it's full of activity, and cyclists participate in these things, which is great. It shows you, I think, healthy mind, excitable mind.
With crowds packing the streets in central London today, and with work about to start on the country's biggest velodrome just a few miles from here, cycling fans in the capital have an awful lot to look forward to.
Well, the activities that are taking place all the way around the course here, and we were listening, of course, to Rachel Phillips speaking to one or two of the spectators. Well, what I can tell you is, while she was talking to them, a little break has formed, and it was instigated actually by Simon Clark, the 22-year-old Australian. He attacked, he took off, and he was eventually joined by 7 other riders, which has now given the composition of the leading group of 8. So here they are, number 15, Vicente Reigns, a Spanish rider. Number 24, Tom Southam of the British team. Number 55, Christian House. Number 65, Daryl Impey from Barlow World. Number 95 is Chris Sutton. Number 114, Anders Lund. Number 142, Danilo De Luca. And number 151, Simon Clark. And I can tell you that they have built a lead now of over 25 seconds.
Well, this gap is starting to grow, and what's interesting here, Hugh, is we have 8 riders representing 8 of the 16 teams in this year's Tour of Britain. And when you get an attack going in a race like this, the important thing is there are many teams represented, but these riders are powering on, and it's Christian House at the front for the Rafa Condor recycling team, just opening up a little gap. Now, the interesting rider in here is the former winner of the Giro d'Italia, Danilo De Luca, the killer they call him.
Yeah, Danilo De Luca. It's lovely to see this 32-year-old Italian racing here on British roads. And he's not here just to have an easy training run over the next 8 days. He wants to get involved in the action. And let's not forget that this fella won the Liège-Bastogne-Liège amongst one or two of the other classics that he's tidied up. So it's a good break, this. And there's every chance, if they work together consistently, that the field behind will be stretched to pull them back, because you said it, there's 8 different teams represented, and I think that all the riders will be quite happy here with the development.
Christian House talking into his race radio there. He'll be communicating with their director sportive, John Herity, and Herity will be very pleased that one of his riders has found himself into this breakaway group, and House is keen to stretch his legs. There on the left-hand side is the man who started this breakaway in the colours of South Australia, Simon Clark.
And Simon Clark just swings over to surrender the lead. Chris Sutton comes through, Sutton riding strongly here on the Garmin Chipotle team, and now it's Columbia at the head of the 8. They're relaying each other. In cycling parlance, they're doing what is known as bit and bit. So if you are a new viewer to cycling, it means that one rider does a bit on the front, keeping the pace high. He then swings over, and then the rest of the squad take over the pace setting. They're looking pretty good.
They are looking very good indeed, Hugh, and this gap is starting to grow. It's approaching 40 seconds, and the peloton don't look too interested. And of course, the teams of Team Columbia represented in here, Garmin Chipotle and the other squads, will be shutting down the front of the peloton and stopping the chase happening.
So the 8 continue now to work well. The road's drying out nicely, which means that they can ratchet the pace up significantly, find those big gears and keep them turning well. Young Sutton comes to the front again here, 23-year-old from Sydney. I remember this fella 5th in the World Under-23 Road Championships a couple of years ago, and Sutton's father, Gary Sutton, was a very talented bike rider. He was a world points champion, as we now see the sight of Danilo De Luca on the front.
De Luca took a glance across to the peloton, and he's just judging how big this gap is as Anders Lund of the Team CSC Saxo Bank comes to the front now.
So the gap is continuing to grow, and these 8 are quite happy to tap the rhythm out at the head of the field. You're looking there at Danilo De Luca, who's riding for the LPR Brakes team. The Italian saw the danger that the bunch was coming up to catch the group. He wasn't going to wait any longer, and now he's gone away. So this Italian trying to put in a bid for victory, but 2.5 laps to go. It's a big ask.
It's a killer blow to the rest of the peloton as Danilo De Luca glances across yet again. This man is a great time trialist. We saw him when he won the Giro d'Italia, having to turn in some great performances in the time trials, but he really looks like he's thriving on the roads of London as he breaks away.
He keeps taking a look back. That's the big field now that are boring down on him because the rest of the break has now been absorbed. So it's just this one man that is clear, and I think it's going to be far too long for him because there's just over 2 laps remaining, and remember it's 5 miles per circuit, so 10 miles to go. He's never going to be able to keep the bunch away.
Danilo De Luca stamping on the pedals, trying to get a little bit more speed out of that bike, but it looks to me like this attack is going to be nullified. 40 miles an hour this peloton are charging up to Danilo De Luca at.
Well, the maximum lead that group established was around about 49 seconds. It was chipped away. It came down to 19, and it went back up to just over 20. But now you can see the advantage is very, very slender indeed. It's a scant advantage now for the Italian, who's still trying to hold the field off.
Well, it's full gas now at the front of this peloton as the team CSC Saxo Bank, of course, with Stuart O'Grady in here, looking to set things up for their sprinter. But surely the other team sprinters will be licking their lips with delight. This race is coming back together.
It's status quo. The field are back together, and there's just about 1.5 laps to go. Everything to play for, and the sprinters will be licking their lips.
Well, here we go. De Luca is now caught as the team CSC Saxo Bank glance across at De Luca. They haven't seen him for about 6 laps. Stuart O'Grady on the front, tapping out this rhythm. Remember, in the Tour de France, O'Grady was on the front of the peloton for 137 kilometres, trying to bring Carlos Sastre to the foot of Alpe d'Huez before Sastre took the Maillot Jaune.
So the power of the CSC Saxo Bank team now starting to form here at the head of the field, which is almost complete. Remember, 96 riders took the start, and the squad there very powerful indeed, with Matthew Goss, who won the stage in Wolverhampton last year. Stuart O'Grady's there, young Jonathan Bellis, Anders Lund, who's been very powerful in the sprints that have took place so far in the race. And Lunt may well be a man that could charge to the line.
Well, of course, on the line at the finish there are time bonuses which could set up a rider into the yellow jersey for a few days. But CSC still on the front as they try to take control now, ready for the sprint. But if you notice over on the right-hand side of the screen, the Garmin Chipotle team are starting to bring their sprinter forward. Normally, the sprinter in the squad is the New Zealand champion, Julian Diener's Chris Anker Sorensen, a stage winner in the Giro d'Italia, comes to the front.
The bonuses on the line are 10 seconds for the victory, 6 for second, and 4 seconds for third.
Well, the arrowhead at the front of the peloton. Things have settled down a little bit as these squads get their troops organised and they bring their sprinters forward. On the left-hand side is the team of Barloworld. Barloworld, of course, have got Robbie Hunter in their midst, the first South African to win a stage of the Tour de France, and a glimpse of Geraint Thomas for the first time.
Well, it's all building up to a very exciting grand finale, and the huge crowd in the finishing funnel are thinking about who they could possibly earmark as a winner here. You've mentioned one or two of the big sprinters there. Let's not forget, of course, the man carrying race number 1. That's Romain Fayou, who is the Frenchman, who's a very quick finisher. He's not a man to be discounted in the charge for the line.
Well, certainly the pace of Team CSC Saxo Bank is being increased all the time. Chris Anker Sorensen just moves across. He lets Stuart O'Grady move through. O'Grady, what a fantastic career this man has had. That win in Paris-Roubaix capitalised on all his training and racing when he's now recovered from that terrible crash in the Tour de France last year. The Great Britain team with Tom Southam, that zip undone all the way down on his jersey. It's not that warm in London today, but Southam is putting in a great effort today for Great Britain.
And of course they've got Rob Hales in the team of Great Britain. He's riding in the national champions jersey. That's a white jersey with the red and blue hoops, and believe me, Hales is a fast finisher as well, and this kind of charge for the line will certainly suit him. He did win a stage a few years ago in one of the tours when he beat O'Grady to the line up in Scotland.
Well, on the right hand side of the screen, the left hand side of the peloton, as we have been looking from our helicopter shots, the team of LPR. They are looking to bring the big sprinter Alessandro Patacchi through to the front. They've got some fantastic riders in that team. Of course, Alessandro Specialetti, the faithful lieutenant of Danilo De Luca, and Emalia Rosa of the Giro d'Italia this year, Gabriele Bossisio.
And Ploughman Craven in those pink jerseys, so who would they be working for the sprint?
Well, they've got some good sprinters in this squad, of course. They'll try and bring forward, I would have thought, Simon Gaywood, who's a great rider when the riders are on these fast circuits. He's been a good rider in the Great Britain Elite Circuit Race Series, but Anpos now starting to make a move to the front. But here come Team Columbia.
Team Columbia, one of the big threats in this race, and they've got a strong Norwegian that I've been following over the years, the 21-year-old, and that's Boasson Hagen. And he's had one or two impressive performances, believe me, in his young career. Greg Henderson as well, the Kiwi, who's been a Commonwealth gold medalist. He's a very talented rider. And in that squad is Bradley Wiggins, who won 2 gold medals in the recent Olympic Games in Beijing.
Well, looking down from our helicopter shots, we can see here the teams trying to bring their sprinters forward, and a great crowd in this finishing area. It's about 4 or 5 deep. The popularity of cycle racing at an all-time high in Great Britain, and we should be getting the bell this time.
Still Ploughman Craven that are turning the screw at the front here, and the rest of the field quite happy to be sucked along by the pace being set here by the Ploughman Craven racing team.
Well, the pink of the Ploughman Craven racing team on the right hand side, but a move on the left as we head back into Bridge Street, again past Big Ben, signifying the time of about 3:15. This pace in this peloton's increased just under 11-minute laps.
Now then, just a slight fragmentation at the front here as riders just slip away out of the wheel, and an attack here starting to form, a tentative attack actually. This is from Rock Racing. Tyler Hamilton, I can tell you, has had a puncture at the back, the American national champion, their skipper, and he will be fighting to get back into the confines here of the bunch, as De Luca is still up there. He'll be looking after, of course, the super sprinter in their team, Alessandro Patacchi.
Well, let's not forget the Rock Racing team have in their midst, as we see another move here at the front from Team Columbia. This looks like Boasson Hagen, who you were mentioning just a little while ago, Hugh. He's a fantastic time trialist, the Norwegian time trial champion, and the peloton, as we near the finish, don't want to let a time trialist like Boasson Hagen go away.
And he has slipped away, and he is the kind of fella that if he just drops the head and gets the big gear going, he likes to be on his own, being a time trialer, and he will take some pulling back. But the long thin line is certainly starting to develop from behind now, which is always a telltale sign that the pressure is on, but the Norwegian still persists.
This rider is incredibly talented, a real hot favourite for some major wins in his career, and he is hot property in the world cycling scene. But look at the LPR team, they are slinging each rider onto the front of the peloton as quickly as they possibly can. They want the win for Alessandro Patacchi, but the Rock Racing team trying to set things up for Fast Freddy Rodriguez.
And Rodriguez can thread his way through the eye of a needle, believe me, in a fast peloton that are racing from gutter to gutter. But it is the Italian team LPR at the moment that are raising the game here. The bar is being lifted significantly higher as the tempo is raised, and that of course is all to help Patacchi, but still he's out in front, this 21-year-old Boasson Hagen, the 21-year-old Norwegian, and he's still got the slender advantage. It's bridgeable, but while they're finessing at the back, this could play into his hands.
Well, it looks to me like the LPR team are really struggling to bring this rider back. For the final time, we have gone round the loop at the top of the course, past our Eon King of the Mountains point, and past the Tower of London. Now it's slightly downhill, and Boasson Hagen burying himself, trying to hold off off this peloton that are hitting 40 miles an hour on this descent.
Looking very promising here then for the Team Columbia. It's managed by Brian Home, and they've got one or two other very, very hot properties in the team that could pop out if they pull this fella back. It is coming back, but oh so slowly. They're chipping away at the advantage all of the time as we're approaching the finish.
Well, the other teams are not prepared to come to the front, although Rock Racing now decide they're going to assist LPR in trying to bring Bosenhagen back into the peloton. A big move on the left-hand side as Columbia try to come up to disrupt the chase.
That's of course what happens in cycling, the tactics. The riders who've got a man clear try to slot into the working line behind, so they disrupt the rhythm, and it's looking very much to me that the Norwegian is going to be pulled back. It's coming down, isn't it? But it's a massive, massive effort here then by Bosenhagen of Norway. But look at the rest of the sprinters. They're starting to form here. They fancy a tilt here at the stage victory. The Norwegian is almost swept up.
You wonder how he is managing to hold off this peloton. This is a tremendous effort, but behind him is the familiar style of David Miller as they bring back Bosenhagen, and now the Garmin team are trying to set things up. Their normal sprinter is Julian Dean of New Zealand, but I wonder whether they will try and bring big Magnus Backstedt, who of course is a bit of an honorary Brit, to the front to try and win this race.
He's based in South Wales, isn't he? But we love him. He rides on the Manchester Velodrome in the winter in the Revolution meetings. But you are right, this is a big team effort now for the David Miller squad on the front, and they're trying to set it up for their sprinter. Backsted's up there, the former winner of the Paris-Roubaix, and also Julian Dean, who finished second actually in the Tour of Britain back in 2004.
Well, the pace is at its absolute limit. Here come the Great Britain team. They want a win in a home in this home race, and now the pace gets increased significantly. But Garmin and CSC taking control. Great Britain trying to get there.
The young Great Britain team obviously trying to look after the interests of Rob Hales, the elder statesman of the squad at 35 years of age, the national champion. 1 kilometre to go now. It's anybody's. They're all in the mix here. Now then, who's going to burst out of the front of the main field? Look out for LPR as well, the Italian team. Remember, they've got Alessandro Patacchi, and Patacchi is the master of popping out of the front of the peloton in the closing stages. The thin line forming here as we've got about 750 metres to go.
This is a thrilling finish, and the riders heading towards a huge crowd here in the centre of London. But now it's Julian Dean. Julian Dean of New Zealand hits the front, and he is going to lead out the massive frame of Magnus Backstedt.
So Magnus Backstedt then is the man that's being led out here. He's such a powerhouse, this Swede. Now then, can he snatch the stage victory? De Luca is still up there as well, looking after the interests of Patacchi. I just caught a glimpse of Rob Hales. Hales is in the mix, the experienced track rider, and the crowd are really getting behind them now into the closing stages.
Well, look at this. The train is really starting to increase the pace. They are sprinting towards the line. Who's going to get this one?
Well, who is going to get this one? It's Patacchi that's hit the front. Hit it right at the right time. Here comes Hales challenging, but Patacchi takes it from Rob Hales of Great Britain, and big Magnus Backstedt takes the third spot. Well, what a thrilling finish it was, but it was the master himself, Alessandro Patacchi, that mastered the rest to the line. So the first three over, Patacchi takes it from Hales, Backstedt third.
I'm very, very, very happy because the first race after 4 months no race, for me 4 months training, only training is very, very difficult, but I good head and I'm very happy.
So Alessandro Patacchi happy enough to be confronted for the first time with a celebratory microphone since his return to racing after serving a ban, and more on that tomorrow. But an instant return to form for one of the world's great sprinters. The stage result looks good too for the 34-year-old, but pretty decent too for GB's Rob Hales in second and Magnus Backstedt in third place, who's been living in Britain so long we virtually claim him for our own. But what went on between those two in the closing metres?
Unfortunately, I got boxed in just the last 200 metres. Maggie Backstedt held me up against the barriers, which is normal. And
he's a big lad as well.
He's a big lad, yeah, and my life is flashing towards me. So by the time I got out of it, it was too far to spring back, they ran out of road.
Plenty of road though for Rafa Recycling's Christian House, who ended the day as king of the mountains, all slight undulations. CSC's Anders Lund, who spent a great deal of the stage out front in that doomed 8-man break, swept up the sprint points. But Pataki crossed the line first, and now he leads the points competition. And as if green isn't enough, he added yellow too. A race lead which may not survive the spikes and troughs of the profiles to come. All but 3 riders finished in the bunch, and the embryonic general classification shows 3 Brits in the top 10, 4 if you count Maggie Backstead, which you can't really, but I just did. But the high calibre name lurking in the pack is Danilo De Luca. OK, so the dust has settled now on the streets of London, and Paul Manning, I guess the tour organisers will be delighted. That's exactly what they wanted, wasn't it? A big bunch sprint.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to a big bunch sprint, seeing the sprinters head-to-head on stage 1. It was good to see the riders get out there early on, get a break of 8 riders. Good spread of teams,
sweep up a few points for themselves.
This is it. Establish a good lead, get some points, get the King of the Mountains jersey on a British rider's shoulder. So that be pretty happy with that.
De Luca looked positive, didn't he? And speaking to Alessandro Pataki there, he says he's definitely the man for the overall this year.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him chance his arm so early on. Being in a break was great, but then to go on his own for a lap or so, it was shows his intent really. With the Worlds coming up, I guess he's got good form. He wants to capitalise on that.
Feeling strong, as is Rob Hales. He could have won it today.
Rob Hales, I saw him with a kilometre to go, just sticking his head out in the wind, and thought, he's up for this today. And that was proved. He could have possibly won. I think he might have felt a bit aggrieved that he got maybe a rough ride in the last few hundred metres, but it's good to see he's got the speed in his legs. And
just very briefly, tomorrow, what does it look like tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow it's not overly long. First point-to-point stage, so it'll be different weather conditions to contend with. I think you'll see a lot of attacking in the first hour, maybe a little break established, and the final third of the race over a second cat and a third cat climb, we could well see the GC riders sort of just establish a bit of a pecking order there and show their intent for the whole race. But part of me says it's bunch sprint again for tomorrow.
OK, well, it's got off to an interesting start, and we'll be watching Alessandro Pataki and Rob Hales, for that matter, defend their jerseys tomorrow on the road to Newbury and looking after their capital gains.